Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Dive Into Diet. I'm with Lucas Schmidt, as always. What's going on?
The fungi are back.
Oh, my gosh.
Fungi are back.
We're talking mushrooms.
Creeping back.
We're talking mushrooms again.
Yeah, again. I really like
is this
mushrooms.
something that we could talk about all the time as mushrooms?
I wouldn't say I could talk about them all the time. I don't have that much knowledge on them. I don't have enough.
Yeah.
There's a gentleman named Dr. Paul Stamets that's his life is mushrooms. So
yep.
He's a genius with the mushrooms. If you want to listen to hours and hours of lectures on mushrooms, look up Paul Stamets. He wears a hat made out of mushrooms, oddly enough. It doesn't look like a mushroom. It's like mushroom fiber anyway.
And for those what we did do an episode on mushrooms a while back. We will put that in the description below if you want to go over all these different types of mushrooms. So we are going over a few right now.
Yeah, 3 more different from the last episode.
Okay.
So
all right.
I think I mentioned this one in the last episode, chaga mushroom.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't. Maybe I did.
Chaga, C-H?
Chaga. Yeah,
okay.
chaga. It's I believe it's nicknamed King of Mushrooms, chaga. Reishi chaga. I think it's nicknamed that. That's not really a clinical title, so I don't really. It's just sort of the ancient. Mushrooms have been used medicinally for thousands of years. So chaga. Why is it interesting? Chaga mushroom is interesting. I always try to find human studies on these mushrooms. That's typically why they blip on the radar for me. If I can't find that, I might mention them. But I'll give a caveat of, might be good for you. Yeah. So one study showed it may prevent the production of harmful cytokines, which cause inflammation in the body. So they've done a study. Again, I would prefer to see more. The problem with anything medicinal, like herbal, there's not a lot of money to be made. And so it's really hard to get funding. Research takes a ton of money and a ton of time. And so it's really difficult for people to do tons of research. So if you can find like one on humans that yields a positive benefit, that's like, woo! Okay, let's get 10 more.
Right.
But it's a good start. It's a good start. So it also contains beta-glucans, which I mentioned in the last mushroom podcast when we were talking about turkey tail mushrooms.
Okay.
So it's also kind of an immune booster for that reason. And this test, there was one test done, that found that it protected liver tissue from tetrabutyl hydroperoxide, which is sort of it's a known chemical. It's a biological chemical that comes from inflammation in other places that can damage the liver tissue. The problem I have with this study is that I believe it was in vitro, which means in a petri dish.
Okay.
With liver tissue. So they're wanting, I believe I read even a footnote that said further testing in humans needed, or long-term testing. So at least they were honest about that. But it's a good start, I guess. That's what's kind of where they have to start.
Yeah.
You don't just, hey, a bunch of people, let's see what happens to you. Not the best thing to do.
No.
So in vitro is, I guess, a good starting point, but not ideal. So I do want to mention that.
Okay.
That's sort of what they're looking at, though, is liver protection. That's kind of, I like to also look at trajectory. What are we using this for, and what are we looking into it for? So that's chaga. Chaga, to my knowledge, not something you want to eat. Most of these medicinal mushrooms taste woody, like wood or bitter. So, except lion's mane, which has a food taste to it. So you want to, probably take it in pill form or powder form. Powder form is always cheaper. If it's pure, comes in a big bag. Scoop it in your coffee or something that has a strong taste.
So
protein shake's a good idea too.
What would somebody take chaga for right now? Would it be like
potential boosting of their immune system?
Okay.
Antioxidant, things like that. The usual reason people take powder, herbal supplements. So that's the main reason. Next mushroom is cordyceps.
Heard of this one?
Yeah, cordyceps is kind of a newer, not fad, but newer kind of mushroom that's hitting the spotlight. It looks really weird in the natural form. It looks like Cheetos, like bright orange Cheetos is what it looks like.
Really?
It's odd, and it's kind of creepy. So cordyceps grow naturally. The way they grow in the environment is mushrooms secrete spores into the air. That's what fungi do. That's how they sort of proliferate. They grow, but they also they reach a certain stage in their development, and then they release spores that you can't really see into the air, like little seeds. And the spores go carried in by the wind somewhere else where it's wet and damp and whatever. and they sprout and grow a new mushroom. So cordyceps spores land on insects, sprout on them, and start sucking the moisture out of the bug. They eat the bug alive while it's alive.
Wow.
They're really creepy. And they pull all the bioavailable minerals and everything out of the insect. And the insect lives a while. And it eventually has this Cheeto growing out of its neck or wherever. And the poor thing eventually just can't move anymore. And it lays down and the cordyceps just sucks it dry. It's really creepy and gross. It's like a predatory fungus.
So the cordyceps live on insects.
Yeah. That's why they're rare. They're kind of rare because it's kind of hard to find them. So nowadays, if you buy cordyceps, they've not probably been plucked from the backs of poor ants, or spiders, and that's an arachnid. But they grow them in labs. Okay. So what they do is they try to recreate I actually watched a video on a guy growing cordyceps on his own. It's like a tutorial. You can grow. You too can grow cordyceps. He actually breaks up multivitamins into the water and dissolves a multivitamin, like a human multivitamin, because cordyceps need a lot of minerals, and that's why they latch onto animals.
Okay.
Insects. So cordyceps are grown in a lab just using a different sort of natural fertilizers that they need, and they're pretty
in order to grow.
Yeah, but they still grow looking like Cheetos. Now, why would one consume this evil mushroom? It's just doing what it can. I shouldn't demonize the poor things. It's just creepy, man.
It's weird.
Yeah, I think it is cordyceps. If I don't want to mix it up, but I believe it's cordyceps that semi-mind control insects to go die near water because they want moisture. That's what fungi really want, moisture.
Yep.
If you sliced a fungus up and looked under a microscope, it would look like tubes, thousands of them, to channel water. It just moves water. That's what it does. So, it does other things, but that's one of its primary functions. So, what does it do? Some of the research indicates that it's a mild booster of athletic performance, so like cardiovascular health, breathing. But my understanding of the research is it's not you take cordyceps and you're just going to feel like $1 million. It's more of it's like 1% improvement in high cardiovascular output. So sprinters, power lifters might get an edge.
Right. So you're talking about somebody who's looking for 0.7.
It's a very niche category.
0.7 of a second off of something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe. It's a maybe. It's also an adaptogen. Have you heard this word, adaptogen?
Yep.
It sort of stimulates your body to adapt and sort of it's improving your immunity, essentially. There was a double-blind study on people, and it concluded it improved cell-mediated immunity. That's fancy. And it activated NK cell, which is a natural killer cell. So NK sounds more sophisticated. Natural killer cells, which just helps your immune system fight pathogens.
Okay.
So, again, need more studies for long term. They made a note of that, honestly, in their study. But it was a human double-blind trial, which is pretty cool. The last one is sort of a oddball. It's called agarikon.
Agarikon?
Agarikon. Agarikon. So it's an almost extinct mushroom. It's really rare. Each mushroom lives 70 to 100 years.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's a very old, tough mushroom. It grows in very difficult climates, I believe cold and wooded areas. So it used to grow a lot in Switzerland in the mountains, in Austria, Germany, those areas. And then in the U.S., I think it grows in California and some of the big forests there. It's huge. It looks like a beehive. It's brown and very woody, tough. Because it lives so long, scientists speculate, I'm going to double check I'm correct here, that because it lives such a long cycle, it spends its whole life fending off infections and bacterial and parasites and all these sort of pathogens that would kill. What's weird is some viruses that affect humans affect mushrooms too, like strep can affect. Yeah, so they adapt to it and they fight it off. That's why people are trying to experiment with mushrooms as medicine, because the mushroom is going to grow antiviral or defenses faster than we are. So it's let's eat those and see what happens. Agarikon that's sort of what it's being used for.
That's interesting.
It's I'm going to give you the German word for it because it's a very old medicine. They used to use it to treat now how effective it was, a lot of ancient medicine, we don't know how well it worked, but it's been commonly used to treat consumption, which is tuberculosis nowadays. They used to call it consumption. So the Germans call it Apothekerschwam, which means agaric of pharmacy.
Interesting.
So, the ancient Germans thought of it as a pharmaceutical use for a reason. But the current research suggests this mushroom lives so long in harsh environments, it's got to be pretty tough, and there's got to be a reason it's pretty tough.
And I'm assuming because it's almost extinct that this is hard to get a hold of.
There are efforts being made to preserve it, so they're now lab growing it. They've taken samples from the environment, and they've got 40 different strains of it that they're trying to cultivate and keep. So you can buy it in supplement form.
That's interesting.
And it's not as horribly expensive as I thought it would be.
Okay.
So I have a bag of it at home. I don't take it every day. I just forget. But again, you need to mix it in something. It doesn't taste good.
How do you, because I know you've gone down rabbit holes with mushrooms here, how would you advise somebody to get started if they're hearing about just what you said with the medicinal uses of mushrooms? How would you get started?
YouTube's a great resource. Just go on YouTube, type in mushroom and their benefits, something like that,
and find something that connects with you.
Yeah, and see. Sometimes these people will say this herb is a miracle herb, blah blah blah. Then what you can do is go on Google or wherever and type in keywords like human clinical trials or human trials, effects on humans, because a lot of the studies are done on mice or in vitro. So I like to look for things like that.
Super interesting.
Also look for side effects. Just be careful. So mushrooms, they're pretty cool.
Guys, this is I guess a second episode on mushrooms. We're going to talk more, I'm sure, on the topic. It's been another episode of Dive Into Diet. Like I said before, we'll link up the episode to the first episode we did on mushrooms below. But as always, guys, thank y'all for hanging out on Dive Into Diet with me and Lucas. Lucas, that's a show, man.
All right.
That's a show. See you guys.
Don't go away.